Welcome back to Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Stanford from Bridgeport PD. He has 29 years experience in law enforcement. Really looking forward to today's conversation. So welcome to the show, Chief Stanford. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thank you so much, Paige. It's an honor to be here and so grateful for the work that you're doing for all of first responders.
Thank
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I wanted to get a little bit of background on you first for context. So, can you give us a little bit of insight? What did your life look like before law enforcement?
Oh, wow. Really, it was totally opposite of law enforcement, to be honest with you. I grew up in a household as a young child of a lot of alcoholism, drug abuse. Actually, if the word abuse, you can associate it with many different forms. I either had that abuse or experienced it myself or saw it throughout my childhood. And, really just a lot of struggles early on as a small child. And I'm really grateful for my grandparents coming along and basically rescuing myself and my brother. And we were living in a small RV in Tennessee, Shelbyville, Tennessee, and they drove up there and rescued us. I was about 8.5, 9 years old. Came back and lived with them, and they raised me from that point forward. But a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse, drugs and alcohol just ruined a family.
Yeah.
I saw that firsthand as a child, and I continue to see it today. So,
Thank you for sharing that. I can relate to that experience as well. And I was raised by a single stepdad. And I felt that love when you said that you were grateful for your grandparents because I felt that same sense of gratitude. I can't even imagine what my life would be like if I didn't have my stepdad trying to give me the best possible life that he could. And, your grandparents didn't have to do that. My stepdad didn't have to do that. And to have people who come into your life and love you unconditionally and want what's best for you is such a blessing. And I try to remember that every day because I think that we're given opportunities to have gratitude. We just have to remember them. Um, I know just being in this space for a long time and working in the first responder community, there are a lot of people in this profession that have similar experiences and come from backgrounds with trauma and, childhood stuff. Why do you think, if you could guess, that people who go through that in their life are maybe drawn towards a profession of service?
well, I think it is a conviction deep inside that you want to rid the community, you want to save everyone, and I think basically it's built inside of us to do that. And you're exactly right. It's very common lunch conversations around conversations around coffee or whatever. We kind of compare war stories about law enforcement, but we also compare war stories about childhood
Mm.
and or some family stories. And so it is very common to have individuals serving, especially in law enforcement, that experience something like that in their childhood, whether it be abuse or they're around drugs or alcohol. Because I think we all see the effects of that on the family unit, and again, we just want to save people from having to go through those traumatic experiences. And I think it's incumbent of us to share our story, regardless of what position we're in. I think vulnerability is attractive as long as you do it in a safe way and professional way. I think people are attracted to individuals and also leaders that share their story.
I agree with that. And it's really interesting because I didn't I didn't think that for a really long time. I did not want to be vulnerable with anybody, and I very much had that mentality when I was growing up that being vulnerable meant that I was weak. And so I completely understand how some people would feel that way, but now through time and experience, I've started to actually think the opposite. I think that it's incredibly courageous and strong to be able to share the messy parts of yourself, especially if your mission is to help other people to learn and to grow through your shared experiences. But I think I want to add one word. I know you said, in like a safe space, and it has to be authentic.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely.
I think authentic is another word to add on to that
Yeah.
because, I've noticed that maybe there are some people who almost try really hard to be authentic to try to gain some sort of, I don't know, response. And I think that if you're going to share your story and you're going to connect with people in that way, it has to be authentic and it has to come from a space where you really want to help people. I'm curious to know because I have my own opinions on this, but do you think that there's also maybe a sense of wanting to prove people wrong and wanting to like make something great of yourself and to be someone great and to do great things because you came from an environment where maybe the bar wasn't set high for you to be great?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where sometimes we get in trouble, right? We're
Mm.
doing it for the wrong reasons. Yeah. So when you're in an environment like that, and I'm just so grateful, I was only around that 8 years on a daily basis. But I continue to experience the effects of drugs and alcohol through just numerous occasions dealing with specifically with my mom. And she's passed now. I have a whole nother story about that, how that all happened. But if we don't deal with those things up front, in which, to be honest with you, I didn't when I started this job. I was a very young person when I got into law enforcement, and so I didn't have a lot of. There was not a lot of tools. It wasn't talked about in the '90s. In fact, you came to work and you sucked it up and went about your business. And
Yeah.
I think if we don't deal with those things, we are trying to prove the world um, that we are better than our parents or better than what we used to be, or we're not going to be like that. And I think that's where it gets, as law enforcement officers, we get in trouble, and that's where they're called badge head, right? We're trying to throw the badge down everyone's throat. We're trying to enforce the law on every possible occasion, and we want to be leaders. We want to be authentic, like you said, and but getting to that point is a lot of work. It
Mm.
doesn't come naturally to us. It certainly doesn't come naturally to law enforcement officers, especially that started in the 80s and 90s, because that was not talked about whatsoever. And,
Yeah.
and actually, you were encouraged to not talk about it,
Mhm.
and almost in a sense, maybe not verbally, but it was encouraged by peer pressure not to talk about things in the past.
Yeah.
And you were rewarded for your hard work, and so you just needed more and more, and you just push everything down further and further.
Yeah. I mean I can completely relate to being young and not knowing how to handle things and not having the tools or resources and shoving it down and what that does to you over time. For me, I was really hardened. I was really reactive. I was just so angry at the world. And I definitely had that chip on my shoulder. I was like, I'm going to prove everyone wrong. And if anyone was at all confrontational, I was very quick and sharp-tongued in not the best ways. And I know what that feels like, but I also know the reverse to it and being able to offload some of those things and how that feels and its freedom, to be able to soften and realize that you don't have to prove yourself to anyone, and you can be authentic and you can be kind and you can, have a heart for other people. And so I appreciate your sharing your past experiences. The one thing I find that's really interesting is, if you go through an experience like that as a kid and you're piling this stuff on and you're encouraged not to talk about it, then you enter into this, profession and you're seeing more and more things throughout the career and having more and more stress that's just compiling on. You've been in this profession now 29 years, and you've seen what the job can do to people's lives, marriages, their careers. Can you maybe give a little bit of insight into some of the things that you experienced early on and some of the things that you saw that maybe have shaped how you lead today?
Yeah, for sure. Coming into this business, um, we try to, we're people pleasers. We're servants. We want to fix everyone's problems.
Yeah.
And so, not only the calls for service, the critical incidents, the deaths, the trauma, the trials and tribulations of everyone's lives and community that you're trying to fix, um, you're affected by your own mess, and all of those calls, all of the different trials and traumas that you go through as a police officer, you continue to stack that on. And so early in my career, again, I go back to there was a stigma about talking about anything with mental health or even just debriefing a critical incident. And you were looked upon as weak. And so we deal with those things through gallows humor. That's a whole other topic. But um, as we move forward in my career, specifically, there's several incidents that took place that really started to expose some of my childhood trauma, but also some of my adult trauma. And specifically in 2009, I went to 11 funerals in 2000. Uh, uh, the first incident, um, I go back to my mom real quick. She had struggled with drugs and alcohol for a long time. And in 1996, I heard sirens coming down the road. We kind of lived on a big family piece of property, and I knew something was wrong. And so I jumped in my car and went down to the house, to my mom's house. She lived on the same place, and I beat the paramedics inside the house. And I found my mom laying on the floor, shot in the head with a bullet hole in the right side of her head. And anyway, the EMS did a phenomenal job. They came in, rescued her. She died 3 times over that couple of days period. And she was transported to Harris Hospital where she underwent some surgery and so forth. And and so we started to rebuild that relationship. She learned how to walk. She learned how to talk. She learned how to feed herself. She learned who I was. She didn't know who we were as children. And so it was kind of like a fresh start, right? And so that was in 1996. And so as we fast forward to 2009, I'm working the street here in Bridgeport, Texas. And I'm dispatched to a fatal accident of a female. And as I arrived on scene, I had the chief at the time. I was the assistant chief. I told him, I said, I think that's my mom's boyfriend's car. And we knew there was a female that was deceased. And so uh, it was my mom. She was deceased in the car. But there was about, 13 years or so of trying to fix our relationship. And so God gave me a little bit of grace there to forgive her for a lot of the problems as a child. And so the strange part about all of this is a sergeant, Sergeant Randy White. He was working that day as well. He came over to me on the side of the road and prayed with me about my mom and everything, this horrid accident. And a month later, we are burying him. He was killed in line of duty. And so it was like bam, bam. And again, I had 11 funerals that year. two of which were very close people in my lives. And so his wife, Janet, Randy White's wife, Janet, very strong Christian lady. They had one child, Jaden. She was 5 years old at the time. She's in college now, doing awesome. But watching her deal with that, uh, the trauma associated with Randy's death, was like a front row seat to just the greatest show on earth, because a lot of forgiveness, a lot of strength and resiliency. And so as we move through that, uh, the chief and I at the time, I didn't have time to process my mom's passing, even though our relationship really wasn't that strong. Um, and then here's Sergeant White's death. It was a felony act. It was an intentional murder. Um, right back to back, and then multiple other funerals. I didn't have time to deal with all of that, the effect of all of that. And so, we were getting resources in for our staff that were working that particular day, but the chief and I did not participate. We were too busy planning funerals. We were too busy, behind the scenes taking care of business. And so we just continued with life, the best we could. And so as we move along over the next several years, we continue just to stack on stack on stack, whether it be small town politics or your own family problems with your own kids, the things associated with that, but also, again, going back to being Mr. Fix-It and wanting to fix everyone's problems in the community and your own staff's problems as well. So unfortunately, I didn't deal with a lot of that stuff, and I didn't deal with the childhood stuff. I didn't deal with the accident of the motor vehicle crash of my mom, or the felony murder associated with Sergeant White. And so years later, I become police chief because I was pretty effective at my job. And so was I ready to be police chief in 2015? Probably not. Emotionally, I probably wasn't at all. And and so it wasn't until a lot of different things in my personal life that occurred, uh, with the combination of work and everything else, that that it really became apparent I needed to deal with some things. Mm. Depression was obvious in my life, some anxiety as well. And so trying to cope with that the best you can, uh, but not knowing how to cope with it, was a scary, scary time. And so we had an individual here at work that was in crises, and he had taken gasoline, lit himself on fire, and then jumped from an elevated position. And officers responded. We all responded, and worked that tragic accident. And obviously, the person did not live through that event, but that really, it was an opportunity for us to once again take care of our people. But also, I could be a part of that process, right? And not really show my weakness of everything in the past, because people didn't understand that. They didn't know about it. I didn't share it. So as I go along there, I go to a counseling session. I remember the first counseling session, and it was supposed to be a 1 hour appointment. And 2 hours later, uh, I am sobbing like some baby, some little child. And I remember looking at the counselor and going, I asked him, I said, "You think I'm crazy, don't you?" He's like, "No, I don't think you're crazy at all." He said, "The amount of trauma you've been through as a kid, you're just a young man trapped in an old man's body." Mm. And I was like, "Oh, wow." And so we talked about a lot of different tools, how to deal with the trauma, how to deal with the anxiety, how to deal with the depression. And so I'll just tell you that work doesn't stop, right? People's lives don't stop just because we're going through something. We still have to be prepared to respond. And I was really good about putting a smile on my face and showing up to work and getting the job done. But I was almost numb emotionally,
Mm,
you know. And so we get done with that 2 hour appointment, and I could hear my phone going off. It was on silent. It was on vibrate. So I turned my phone over and realized that we had a critical incident in town here where a young man got shot over a drug deal. And so I ended up spending the next day and a half awake without sleep, trying to chase this bad guy here in town. And it just goes to show you that, uh, we have to be prepared emotionally, physically. We have to be well in those areas to function um, and to give our community an excellent service. But it also shows you that sometimes you can put lipstick on that pig
mm,
and put them out there, even though that pig is hurting. And no pun intended here, talking about law enforcement. But really, what I was trying to say, there's a facade there that oftentimes we can put on
yeah.
that say we're okay, but really, so I know I just said a whole lot of stuff there, but I wanted to give you kind of the background exactly what was going on or what was transpiring over those few years.
I appreciate that background. And I think that anyone who's listening who's in law enforcement can relate to some of the things that you're saying. And I say this all the time. Our stories might not be exactly the same, but I think there's relatability to the
Oh,
things
absolutely.
that you share. What were some of the tools? Now you had this 2 hour therapy session where you were really getting a lot of the stuff out. You said that that person gave you some tools to be able to manage, and then you leave the appointment straight back to like, let's go, critical incident, day and a half of no sleep. After all of that settled, were there any tools or strategies that you use that were really helpful for you to start to manage some of those things and offload some of those things?
Yeah. So, I mean, several more appointments,
Mhm.
counseling sessions, obviously. But after that incident involving the person in crises, I developed a relationship with a therapist, a local therapist here in Wise County, Kelly Jones, and she works for the Center for Emotional Wellness, and they do a phenomenal job over there for first responders. And so I started meeting with her, and throughout this process, and as well as the other counselor. But really, Kelly was the one that really provided a lot of different tools from mindfulness. We started doing mindfulness as a group here at the police department. And I'll just be transparent with you. I was like, hey, we're dealing with this critical incident involving this person in crises and our response. But really, I was getting so much more out of it.
Mm,
I was dealing with a lot of stress and anxiety and depression and everything else that had stacked up over the years. I was using this incident to also help me, as well as my other staff, because I know there's other staff members that have done the same thing, just like you said. Our stories may be different, but they're so similar. And so we were having group mindfulness training. We did some yoga together, which, as you know, was pretty
mhm.
comical with a bunch of cops.
Yeah.
But as well as EMDR, that was huge. Um, but I think the out of all of the tools, mindfulness by far, getting that quiet space, turning the phone off for a little bit, going outside, being present, learning how to be present.
Mm,
Because again, we're so much on the go, call after call after call, and even as a police chief, I still have the stress of the calls and so forth in a small agency. I'm still out responding to different issues. And so that the machine never turns off, right? It's always going. And so it's time, realizing time away, getting in that quiet space and understanding how to be present was huge, and probably still is probably the best tool that I've I've learned to deploy on a regular basis, and that's been very helpful. I think too, learning to shut off social media
Mm,
for a time, and I think is very important for leaders, regardless of the size of the agency, but especially in small agencies. We have 32 employees here. I know all 32 employees. I know their spouses. I know their kids. I know their parents. And so, which is great, but it also can be a hindrance to turn the mind off because we know that if we're on social media, we know they're doing this, and they're going through these different trials. We never have time to decompress.
mm,
And so, I would say probably the best tool is the mindfulness that I've been able to employ,
yeah.
uh, you know, since 2017, really. So,
Yeah. I agree with you. I think mindfulness is super effective and it's something that's helped me a lot too because I have really bad anxiety. Um, I I had almost debilitating anxiety, panic attacks. I was medicated for a really long time. I do a lot of like checking and different things that like little nervous tics that I have. And so I've had to learn how to manage anxiety. And um, one of the things I think is really interesting, there's always these buzzwords, right? And we know wellness is something that has kind of gained traction over the last few years. But I had asked this question because mindfulness is something that is now, I think, widely received, maybe not
oh
by
yeah.
everybody, but it's something that's more common within the first responder profession. And I had asked a group, I was like, what is mindfulness? And everyone was like, we don't know. And I loved your definition of it because it's exactly right. It's just learning to be present, like noticing what is going on right now. And there's lots of different tools and techniques that you can do to do that, like grounding and, focusing on your breath, the sounds, the smells, around you. But it's easier said than done. It takes practice, right? Because your mind is always wanting to go somewhere else.
Oh yeah.
They call it like the monkey mind, that's like
Yeah.
always like busy and wanting to think about other stuff. So it's either ruminating on the past or it's worrying about the future. And so having that space to know what is going on in that moment is so important for nervous system regulation. And so I appreciate you sharing that definition because I think sometimes we say all these words and then people are like, but what is it? I don't even know what that is. What does it mean to be mindful? And it really is that practice of presence.
Well, I tell you what, Paige, you're exactly right. Because the first time I went to therapy, I thought, you have this vision in your head, like you're sitting on a couch and there's going to be candles and, there's this, aha moment. It's nothing like that. And I think the positive is obviously my health, my emotional wellness, the gauging. Okay, in recognizing signs. Okay, here I'm feeling this way. Okay, this is a sign. Let's take a deep breath. Let's take a step out. Let's go get in the car, drive around town, quiet your mind down. Go to a quiet spot. So now I know those signs before they happen. The gut issues. I can go on and on and on. Things I had no clue that were happening and why they were happening. But I think outside of my own wellness, obviously my relationships are better. They're healthier. Um, but the conversations I've had about this, and I'm just a transparent person, and I'm not fearful what people will think of. Oh my God, the chief is sharing this or that. I am what I am, and hopefully I can use this story to help others. And I know I have actually, because the conversations that have taken place in the last 7 years, based off of that initial counseling appointment that I had, have been just fantastic. So many employees that are experience similar, uh, anxieties or maybe not depression to the same extent, but the experiencing the trials and tribulations, learning how to cope, learning how to deal with those things in a productive and also healthy way has been huge. I know it's helped our staff. When I stand up in front of my staff and I say, "Hey, how we doing emotionally? How we doing physically?" And say, "Hey, it's okay not to be okay. It's just not okay to stay that way. If you're not okay, that's okay. Let's find a reason what's happening, and let's give you a tool to deal with it. And you're not going to be shunned. You're not going to be punished. And I'm going to make sure that you're okay. It's my job to do that. And I'm going to walk with you, beside you during that process." And so my relationships with my staff have been much stronger since that point. And I'm sure some people may take advantage of that vulnerability, but that's on them, the way I look at it. So,
I love that. And I think that it creates, like you said, a space of safety to be able to process everything. And I think that that's what's needed. And I'm going to pause here for a second and I'll cut this out. But
okay,
can you hear that landscaper?
I can't.
You
No,
can't? Okay.
no.
Let me give it just a second and I'll cut this.
Okay,
But he's been coming and I've been able to like pause it, like mute me, but I just want him to walk away for a second.
no worries.
You can't hear that at all?
Mm-mm.
Okay. All right, we'll hop back in. But I think that's needed. I think that that creates a space of safety so that people don't feel shame. I think that there's a lot of fear and shame when you're feeling like maybe you are weak or maybe that you do need help. And I do think that we are the last people to want to ask for that. And so if
Oh,
you
absolutely.
have people around you in your circle, especially in leadership, who are sharing these stories, there's some solidarity to that and knowing like, hey, like we're all going through this together and it's okay if you need resources and I'm going to be super supportive of that. I also think and again, this was not like this is all through learned experience in like my old age. Like this was not how I felt when I was younger. But I think that all of our hardships, all of our challenges, everything that we've gone through in our life become our superpower.
Absolutely.
It's, and I think that I had the mentality of like, why me for a
Mhm,
really long time,
mhm,
um, I'm gonna try not to get emotional. But I had a lot of self-worth
mhm.
stuff. I thought that everything that happened to me was because I wasn't good enough. And if I was good enough, then, my parents would love me and they wouldn't do the things that they were doing. And maybe if I was smarter, more athletic, or funnier, then maybe, people would love me and care about me. And then those things didn't happen because it didn't have anything to do with me. But when I was younger, I didn't realize that. And so then I internalized all of it and I thought that, I just wasn't good enough. And I was always of the mentality of like, why me? And I think now it's like almost a sense of gratitude that it was me. I don't know if that sounds like so weird to say, but like I do not think that I could be effective or as effective in what I do today and how I'm trying to help people if I didn't have those experiences. And I would say that that makes you a better leader too, to be able to have gone through those things, even though they're awful and you wouldn't want anyone else to go through that because you have those perspectives and those experiences, now you can speak from a place of authenticity and you can have empathy for other people and you can share that experience so that other people can learn from you and you can be there for other people. And so I almost now have a sense of gratitude, and I do think that it's a strength.
Oh, absolutely. I think anytime someone can speak from a platform of experience, regardless of the topic, it makes them that much more uh, authentic or that much more of a professional in that area. Sometimes, like you said, you wonder why. And obviously, throughout the years, my grandparents didn't come to games, and they wouldn't drive at night, so I had to find a way home. If I had practice and this and that, and you kind of can get in that space where you're feeling sorry for yourself, you're exactly right.
Mhm.
I'm a spiritual person, and thank God for my relationship with Jesus Christ. And even though I have that relationship, there were still times I was going, wow.
Yeah.
Even as an adult, as a 31-year-old guy going through a divorce with three kids and extremely in debt, I was like, wow, man, what have I done? You know, first it was all this stuff as a kid. Now here I am as an adult. My kids are going to have to go through something similar, you know, with divorce and so forth. It's so messy and nasty. But at the same time, God is faithful. He's sovereign, and I've seen it too many times. He's used my story in too many incidents as a police officer, as a fellow, you know, brother in Christ, or a fellow parent to help mentor others. Many teams that I've coached throughout the years, I've had the opportunity to pour into some kids and that are going through something similar that I did. And so it's those moments that make all of that nonsense worth it, right? And you're like, oh man, that's so great.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if we're not careful, all of that starts sneaking back in.
Yeah.
And again, I'm a spiritual person, so I think, you know, is it Satan's way of trying to lead us back into that um, uh, arena of feeling sorry for ourselves? I don't know. I think it's, if we're not careful, we're not surrounding ourselves with people that are strong and that are going through those similar, uh, you know, crises or whatever, or have been there and done that, and providing some tools for us. I think it's easy for us to get back in that mindset. So I'm so grateful for my story. You know, I know my story's not over with, but I'm going to continue to use it in a positive way and share it. It's just who I am.
Yeah, I love it. I think to your point, it's important to remember that there's no destination to wellness. Obviously, like there can be goals, like
That's
you can
good.
be like, I want to reach these milestones, but it's a ever long process and it's ever evolving. Your wellness is the things that you're doing now for your wellness are going to look different than what you're going to do in 5, 10 years. And so it's this journey, not a destination. And I think that it's important. You said this earlier, and I took note of it. It's important to kind of understand your tendencies when things become overwhelming, or when you start to kind of like quote unquote fall off. And for me, it's the snippiness. Like I can, and it's always the first indication for me is always like driving, like where something happens and I just like am so upset that someone cut me off or whatever. Not like, not to a degree, but like I just get like a little
Yeah.
too about it. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like I need to go and practice mindfulness or breathing or go do my yoga or whatever. So I think that if you start to know your tendencies of like, okay, this is the type of person I am, or this is the type of response that I have to situations when I'm really not taking care of myself and I'm stressed or, overwhelmed or whatever it is, then you can kind of keep yourself on that path because now you can kind of self-identify those quote unquote like warning signs, or
Oh yeah,
I'll say like
absolutely.
the beige flags that everyone
Yeah,
says.
yeah.
I
Well, don't drive in Dallas on 635 because you'll be screaming,
I'm
hitting your
sure.
steering wheels.
I'm sure. So I wanted to kind of just go back a little bit. So you had this critical incident that really shook the agency. And then this was kind of your time where you were like, okay, we need to focus on wellness. This is something that we can do together. You started doing mindfulness and yoga and some things together organizationally. What does organizational wellness look like to you? What are the different pillars or the different resources that maybe you guys have had success implementing, and maybe some things that are on your radar that you haven't done yet, but you kind of know the importance and it's something that you're actively building?
Well, so we have four pillars of wellness. We've already talked about emotional wellness, but physical fitness as well,
Mhm.
spiritual wellness, whatever that looks like to you. and then financial wellness is the fourth. And so we've been really good, I think, at physical fitness. We try to work out as a team. We have, testing throughout the year, and a little bit of competition never hurt anyone. So we post those things on the wall, not to shame anyone, by the way, but it's also to say, hey, look, this is where I was last year or 6 months ago, and look where I'm at now. And
Yeah.
so that's also positive. But the emotional wellness, so that has been a focus since 2017. That's continued to grow. Uh, you know, go back to Kelly Jones, her and her crew. She actually came over here and started meeting with staff, and still does. Counsels with staff, rides with police officers on a routine basis. Sits at our 911 center, talks to our telecommunicators. I think that's huge because so many departments forget about our dispatchers,
Yeah.
and they are the first responder. And so taking care of those folks is very important. And so out of that is spun a CIT team that for a small agency to have a on-staff counselor, crisis interventionist is huge for us. That person comes twice a week and not only meets with staff, but also meets with individuals in the community. And, continuing all of those tools that we talked about earlier. But we need to do a better job in our financial wellness pillar, bringing in individuals on that routine basis to talk about the importance of finance, because it all has a ripple effect, right?
Right.
And the way I kind of draw this out, the four pillars is a stool. There's four legs on a stool. If one of those legs is not too sturdy, that stool's going to fall over, and
Mhm.
so it's going to have a ripple effect in that employee's life, but also in the chief's life. And I think we talked a little bit about it, but I think the importance of surrounding, as a police chief or a police leader, law enforcement leader, surrounding yourself with individuals that have been there and done that, but also the up and comer. So you have someone you can vent to, relate to, discuss these issues with, but also not someone that's retired on duty, that they're just going through the motions waiting for that retirement day,
Mm.
but someone that's up and coming that understands the nuances of professionalism in law enforcement, that understands and also embraces what we've been talking about today, being transparent and authentic, and in removing the stigma of mental health from our first responders. And I serve on the Texas Law Enforcement Peer Network Executive Committee with a lot of good folks. And man, just listening to those folks be vulnerable. I remember the first meeting we had, one of the chiefs was emotional and started crying, telling the story why he wanted to be on this group. And I'm like, bam, there it is. What
Mhm.
if we could all be like that?
Yeah.
Not to be an emotional, person all the time, but to really show their true self in front of a group, regardless of how they're going to be looked at, and the fear of being shamed or something like that, but just being authentic. That's the environment I want to grow here.
Yeah.
With 32 employees, it's a little more simple than 150 or 200 officers. I understand that. But on the same token, it's difficult because going back again, I know their lives, their kids, their family. And so if there is a negative moment, which we just went through one not too long ago, I know how that's going to affect the wife. I know how it's going to affect the kids. I know how it's going to affect the parent. And
Mm.
so it's a lot of stress as a leader. And we have to make those decisions, and they're tough decisions sometimes.
Yeah.
And that itself is stressful.
When you said that there was someone in leadership that stood up and got emotional sharing their story, to me, the words that popped in my head was like, how strong and
Yeah.
powerful and courageous is that? And to me, and I've said this before, but I still really like, I get it because I've been there. I get it, like conceptually, but I just don't understand how we got to a point where we thought that that was weak. Because to me, like, there is nothing scarier and more courageous than being authentic and vulnerable in front of people. Like for people to see who you are and for you to like be able to show them this side of you that most people don't get to see. Like I think for me, like that is the strongest quality. So I hope that you're right. I hope that, as we go along, and I think that there's been great strides already. I've been in this wellness space for 8 years, and 8 years ago versus today, it's
100%.
night and day of the receptiveness and the conversations that we're having. And so my hope is that continues to spread because I do think that positivity and forward growth is infectious and contagious. And the more we can have those conversations, and the more individuals like yourself who are in leadership that are willing to step out of that comfort zone and, maybe bring down those barriers a little bit and share, then the more people are going to feel safe to also do that themselves. My final question to you is, what words of wisdom would you share with someone who's earlier in their career? Maybe something that you wish you would have known or something that's helped you along the way.
Well, I'll share two things. You know, uh, that's such a powerful question. Um, and I'll just make one comment. You're so right. In the last 8 years, it's been so much better.
Mm.
Um, the stigma is starting to be removed.
Yeah.
We're starting to chisel that away. We need to continue that effort. Thank you for what you're doing, having these conversations. And I prayed about what I want to talk about and how should I be reserved or should I tell some of the story or half the story? And I think you're exactly right. The chief that got on that Zoom meeting many months ago, uh, that's true level of strength, and that showed me that it's okay. And I thought about that when I was thinking about getting on this meeting with you. So you're exactly right. So the question that you ask, I would answer it this way. First of all, I would say surround yourself with people outside of law. As a young police officer, all of my friends were police officers. And so therefore I was at work around cops. I was away from work around cops. Everything that I did, every conversation, every book, every you know, everything that I did surrounded law enforcement. And so I've become very jaded toward the human race. Everyone is a crook, everyone is a criminal. And so learning that as a young officer, that the importance of having friendships outside of law enforcement can help shape your career. Um, I think that's huge because not everyone is a criminal, and we don't need to treat everyone as a criminal. And just because we wear a uniform doesn't make us any better than the homeless person on the side of the street. We're all in this together, trying to figure out this thing we call life. The second thing I would say is when you find yourself in the moment that you feel like you're not okay, it's okay to ask for help, to reach out, to be bold. Um, and if for some reason you're punished for that, that shows you who you work. That shows you who you're working. And maybe you need to have another job. You need to go find another job because that's not the right person. So be bold, ask for help, understand that it's okay not to be okay. It's just not okay for us to stay that way.
Mm.
And there's going to be peaks and there's going to be valleys. And our goal is to kind of minimize those peaks and minimize the valleys and to learn how to respond in a more effective level manner. So
Thank you.
you're welcome.
I appreciate your time so much. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I appreciate you being willing to share your story and your experiences and be vulnerable with me today. And it's not lost on me. I think, and I don't know if this again is just age, but I've really started to recognize that our time is our most valuable asset. And so you coming on here and sharing an hour of your time with me I'm really grateful. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. It's a true honor. Keep doing what you're doing because honestly, you're doing God's work and you're you're making an impact. So thank you so much.
I appreciate that. We'll talk
All
soon.
right. All right.